A small little storefront in Paddington, in Sydney. And in that storefront they held Gita classes, they held Kirtan, they served Krishna Prasad, and people, they came along. Actually, at that time there was lots and lots of interest, so every Sunday they would have hundreds of people, literally hundreds of people, lining up to get into that small little storefront and chant Hare Krishna, hear, discuss Bhagavad Gita, take Krishna Prasad. They moved to many, many different locations because wherever they set up a small temple, it gathered a lot of interest, and the landlords would get lots of complaints from neighbors, and so their leases would get terminated after a very short period of time, and they would have to find another location. Eventually, there was an Indian gentleman. At that time, there weren't that many Indian people in Australia. Immigration policy wasn't favorable towards Indian people coming to this country. But there was an Indian businessman visiting, and he came to the temple, was very impressed by the bhakti, by the devotion of the devotees in this little shopfront temple. And he wanted to sponsor. He said, "You should have Radha Krishna Vigraha." And the devotee said, "Well, that would be very nice, so we don't have Radha Krishna Vigraha." He said, "I will send you." And so they didn't really take it that seriously. But he did in fact go back to India. He purchased Radha Krishna deities and shipped them to Sydney. Unfortunately, by the time the deities arrived, the devotees had already moved to the next location, and they hadn't provided a forwarding address. And so these deities just stayed at Bondi in the, or somewhere, one of the ports in Sydney, and Botany Bay. They just stayed in Botany Bay in a shipping crate, and eventually they were sent back to Mumbai. So Prabhupada was visiting Mumbai, and that gentleman who had sponsored these deities, he went to visit Prabhupada and says, "Prabhupada, I donated deities to your disciples in Sydney, but they didn't accept them. They sent them back to me here." And Prabhupada was quite astonished. Really? Why would they do that? So he said, "You bring them to me." And Prabhupada, he kept those deities on the altar in the Maidan Pandal. It was a 7-day program that Prabhupada held in the Cross Maidan in Mumbai. Thousands and thousands of people were visiting that Maidan every evening, and Prabhupada was giving his discourses, and the devotees were holding kirtan. These deities, they were presiding over that festival. It just so happened, or who can say, it was Krishna's arrangement, Krishna's will, that a few days later, after that Maidan, Prabhupada was flying to Sydney. And so he brought those deities with him. He carried one of the deities, Krishna, his disciple, his secretary carried Radha, and they arrived at Kingsford Smith Airport with these deities and installed them in a shopfront temple in Paddington in Sydney. And those deities, they moved many, many locations because they were always getting kicked out of their temples. Eventually, they have now a temple in North Sydney, and they have been there for many years now. But we know that that temple is also very small. When we have any large festival, it's very difficult to get inside that temple to hear the pravachan, to hear the lecture. It's difficult to participate in the kirtan, or if there's an abhishek, make sure you're there very, very early, because it will be almost impossible to get a place if you arrive just a minute or two before the abhishek is to begin. Janmashtami, there are lines up the street, so it's a very small premises, and so there is certainly a need to establish another temple, a larger temple that can better serve the community that has grown and expanded here in Sydney. And so there is this plan. Some land has been purchased in the southwest, a new up-and-coming region of Sydney, and plans are being drawn up to construct an extraordinary temple. An extraordinary temple that will speak to the future generations. If our North Sydney temple has provided a spiritual center for the people of Sydney, you just wait and see what happens when this new temple comes up. We cannot imagine, we cannot anticipate the spiritual energy that will be generated from there. When Krishna comes and the deity is installed in a place, that place actually becomes a dham. So Vrindavan Dham expands into this earthly realm. In Bharat, in India, when Krishna makes his appearance in Vrindavan, Mathura, these are all dhams. But when the deity is installed in a place, that place is also a Dham. And so when this Dham is established in the southwest of Sydney, it will create such a center for spiritual strength and dynamism and growth, and it will be such a source of spiritual enlightenment and upliftment for the community. Not only us, not only our community now, but the generations that are to come. And so this is a beautiful opportunity that we have. There is a will in the community to build this temple. Land has already been purchased. There is a way, there are plans that have been drawn up, and we just have to be a part now. We just have to contribute. This is going to happen. It's not a question if it will happen. It's going to happen. The question is, how much will we contribute to this? How much will we take advantage of the opportunity to be a part of this? You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, he was a little bit afraid to fight on that Kurukshetra battlefield. He saw his guru, he saw his family members, and he was overwhelmed with grief, and he said, Madhusudan Krishna, I shall not fight. Then Krishna, he preached to him, you are afraid of hurting the body, but in fact you're hurting these people, killing these people, but in fact the soul is eternal. The soul cannot be killed. Nainam chindanti shastrani, cannot be killed by any weapon, burned by fire, moistened by water. No one can destroy the imperishable soul. But he also told Arjuna, it is your duty it is your dharma to participate in this. You are a ruler and you are to defend dharma, and so do it without passion, without desire. You do it as a seva. Then he showed Arjuna his Virat Rupa, his universal form, which was also a Kala Rupa. So Arjuna could see past, present and future. And this Kala Rupa, he said to Arjuna, this war is already won. The outcome is already there. The question is, will you participate and take the credit? Will you get the benefit of having fulfilled your dharma in protecting dharma through this righteous war? That's the question. And so we have a similar question now. The temple's already built. It already exists. If you could see the Virata Rupa that Arjuna saw, you would also see that glorious temple in the southwest of Sydney. The question is, will you take the benefit, the opportunity to take benefit from the manifestation of this magnificent temple that will not only benefit our community, but many, many generations of devotees, of people to come. I hope you will. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Sri Prahlad Prabhu. Very, very inspiring words indeed. We also have a very, very special guest amongst here tonight, His Holiness Veer Krishna Goswami Maharaj.